which deeply enhanced her coursework she had already done related to Buddhism and South Asian religions in the religion department. She's taken a very wide range of courses, which is always very admirable. She's also studied religion and psychology and things like spirit possession and the sacred body, which you will see are all brought together in this very fascinating concept that we're about to hear. So without further ado, Hanna.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everyone, for coming. The title of my talk is Realizing the Really Real Spirit Possession and Schizophrenia in a Traditional Indian Healing Temple. So for my senior integrative exercise, I really wanted to do something cumulative, obviously. And so I was thinking about something that really drew me to the major of religious studies, and that was, I was wondering a lot about how different religions can all be real, even though they're contradicting, how science and religion can be real, both, even if they say different things. And so I was asking this question of how can multiple truths exist? And so that brought me to this. My research questions specifically were, given that no one can get inside the minds of people in distress to see what is really happening, how do people come to understand their own affliction as either religious or psychological? Does the existence of either schizophrenia or spirit possession negate the reality of the other? Can science and religion exist and even complement each other? How does traditional healing offer real relief for people in distress at a Hindu healing temple? And how can scholars of religion help nuance the conversation about labeling and categorization in order to promote a deeper understanding of traditions, rituals, and phenomena cross-culturally? So that's a lot. A lot is my argument. So in this presentation in my paper, I say that in India, schizophrenia and spirit possession are both real experiences for the afflicted subjects, because both instances of these non-normative behaviors act as manifestations from and reactions to the physical and social spaces in which they occur. They both rely on the lived experience of the subject. And finally, localized Indian healing produces real effects through religious ritualization and the role of community. And this performance of possession embodies specific paradigms of knowledge and reaffirms their truth. So I looked at this one specific healing temple in India. I found 5 different authors, a mix of anthropologists and psychiatrists who had gone and done case studies there, since I myself could not go do a study. And this healing temple is a traditional Hindu space in northern India. But what's the deal with this? Why did I choose this one? Well, it is one of the most well-known healing sites in India, despite not being the only healing site in the area, let alone the country. But pilgrims come from all over the nation to seek help there. And the people who come, it's a mixture of all sorts, all genders, ages, class, caste, varying backgrounds of religiosity. And so I was wondering again, what brought all these different people there? And there were 2 main similarities that I found amongst the studies I read. And those were that, one, although not always the case, most of the time the people were had already had a psychological diagnosis from a doctor of some sort of mental illness, but they hadn't found the desired relief and improvement in their lives through biomedicine, and then came to this temple as a last resort. And then secondly, this was the case with everyone, that they were accompanied by at least one other family member. In a lot of cases, their entire family came. And so this really engendered an environment of community, and the healing process was, in order to be successful and really work, required the involvement and participation of the entire community. Mostly because the affliction is understood to be not a physical ailment, but something with a behavioral, emotional, or relationship issue. And so working with families and within the community, they work to improve social dynamics as well as the physical bodily ailments. So paradoxically, people come to this temple seeking relief, but at the temple there is this ritually induced trance in the healing process that, again, the family is very important with, the chanting, the clapping, the community. And so the authors that I read detailed similarities among the different cases of people swaying and chanting, yelling abuses and expletives at others, writhing on the ground, shrieking, moaning, etc. So, like I said, a lot of these people already were diagnosed with schizophrenia before they came. And so just a little quick blurb on that. Schizophrenia is a psychotic disorder, which is defined as having thoughts and emotions that are so impaired that you've lost contact with the external reality. And of course that made me ask, what does that mean? What is the external reality and how do we know what that is? Prominent symptoms of schizophrenia include delusions and hallucinations, which you could categorize as, or you could say seeing or knowing spirits and dead relatives could fall under that. Inappropriate affect, which again, yelling abuses would qualify as that. And then depersonalization or derealization, which again, like taking on the persona of a spirit qualifies that. So there's like this very clear relationship between the two, that they seem objectively to be the same thing, schizophrenia and spirit possession, but they, one didn't provide treatment and the other does provide healing. So I was wondering, how does that happen? Just a little bit on the mental health situation in India. Both of these figures are from 2017, so fairly recent. There have been estimations. Some of the readings I did said up to 100 million, but this chart says 60 million Indians suffer from some form of mental illness, with 10 to 20 million having severe mental illness. But then the figure on the other side shows that in 2017, there were less than 4,000 psychiatrists across the entire country. And this chart says that they would need at least 13,500 for like the bare minimum requirement. And so they're up 3 times below that. So a lot of the scholarship that I found was really focused on this gap between the people who need treatment and then the treatment available. But none of the studies I looked at acknowledged that healing sites, which are very accessible and affordable to most Indian citizens, whereas 4,000 psychiatrists are not. Even though it's not like psychiatry, it still is a form of mental health care and does provide some treatment and healing. And I think this is a problem because when scholars emphasize the benefits of Western psychiatry over local healing, they ignore the inherent difficulties in treating people whose concepts of their individuality and selfhood are different than those that which the Western biomedicine paradigm assumes. And so these common practice within biomedicine places the illness as residing within either the body or the mind, and sees those two as separate divisions. And rather than looking at the body as a whole or as a socially influenced entity, biomedicine isolates the area of pain and seeks to treat merely the part that is in distress. Because local Hindu practices recognize spirit possession as frequently caused by relationship and social turmoil, having just an isolated plan of treatment is not the most conducive to healing. So in my project, I looked at a lot of different theorists. This was one, Arthur Kleinman. He is a very prominent scholar in cross-cultural psychiatry, and he helped me understand this theory of the construction of the illness experience and the role that social reality plays within that. So Kleinman points out that illness begins with the sick person's attention to and perception of their pain and distress, and thus their illness experience is contingent upon the specific time, place, historical moment within which they're experiencing it. So he says, sickness as a natural phenomenon is cast into a particular cultural form through the categories that are used to perceive, express, and evaluate symptoms. Thus, the label of an ill person applies to the subjective feelings, and their objective physical pain will in itself exert a power that both influences how they experience their pain and how those around them interpret their pain. And furthermore, Kleinman points out that this label that you put on illness is always a cultural category based on the explanatory accounts available to people in the particular social, cultural, historical moment. This is super important in terms of my project because it shows how the objective signs of pain are understood differently depending on the different cultures and spaces in which the pain arises, which alters the experience of the illness itself. And because as you understand yourself to either be weird, abnormal, sick, unhealthy, any sort of negative association you put on an illness that sort of stigmatizes it, there's a lot of effects that has on both like the physical experience, but then also the mental aspect of how you would interpret and then experience your pain. So, whereas at the Balaji Healing Temple, this notion of spirit possession is widely accepted as a valid experience of illness, so people can internalize this knowledge and then act in ways that reinforce both the reality of their distress, but then also the reality of the treatment. So, how does healing become real at this temple? So, in the Carlson Religion Department, we tend to fangirl over this guy, Robert Orsi. People say he's like the leading religious theorist nowadays, but I'd like to say that after this next there might be a new leading religious theorist of our day. I read so many theories, it was a lot, and they were good. I constructed my own theory on how people understand their realities and choose which models of knowledge we should privilege. It's a three-part triangle cycle, and so this is a cycle. I'll start with one dot. We have social learning, which means that, not to get too deep, but we exist in a society. And so therefore, we are all socialized into who we are based on these broader concepts of truth and knowledge. And so it's this learning process that's both conscious and subconscious. And it reinforces the social worlds that we exist in. And so through that, that's all good and well, but then you have to take the theory and these abstract truths and turn them into practice. So that's my second dot. And so we construct these truths in our own ways, through our own experiences, and through the ways that we act them out, which then leads to embodied knowledge. And so in interacting in the social world, we both reaffirm these truths that we've been socialized into, and then we also create our own and make our own personal experience through them. And it's a cycle, obviously. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where the individual absorbs their social reality and then fashions their own sense of their personal identity and experience, and this sense of reality based in their lived experiences. And so this is super important for my paper, for the study of spirit possession. But in taking one of the steps I have outlined here, I'm going to turn this theory into actual kind of practice, put it into my case study at the Balaji Healing Temple in India. I have it color-coded the same as the cycle. So I argue in my paper that first at biology, well, there's like reality and truth, both capital R, capital T, is mediated through the experiences of the bodily pain and the bodily treatment. And I use Pierre Bourdieu's notion of habitus and theory on the socially informed body in practice. I'm not going to get into that right now because it's complicated, but basically it's what I've been saying, that like bodily practice helps mediate and clarify reality and truths. So then the second part I have is the role of the physical and the social setting in interpreting the signs of distress, and I use Catherine Bell's theory of the ritualized body to support that. And finally, I argue that a lived experience approach privileges embodied experiences over the abstract notion of spirit possession, and thus enables the reality of the possession. And I use William James's pragmatic approach to the varieties of religious experience. So in all of the pieces I read that did this actual case study at the actual temple, most of them would say either the healing becomes real through ritual-based and or community-based healing. And so I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but how does it become real? And that's where I use Catherine Bell, a very prominent religious scholar, and since at the temple, rituals are a part of daily lives, both in the healing processes, but then also just in regular temple rituals. So the people who go to Balaji seeking help participate in these daily rituals, making a daily routine, and then also enabling them to be part of the social community of the temple and not relegating them off to a secluded healing spot, but rather allowing them to maintain social relationships and work on improving their social dynamics. And so by forging a space to express their pain and have that expression validated by those around them, the temple setting and the community there contextualizes people's pain and builds upon that community in order to allow them to heal. So I have this quote where Catherine Bell says, "Structured and structuring experiences of the world appear to guarantee the reality and value of their underlying schemes by means of the sense of fit or coherence between the instincts of the socialized body and the environment in which it acts." So she points out this connection between the bodies and the environment there, both the social and the physical spaces. And then, so in the case of the Balaji Healing Temple, the spirit possession fits the model and thus allows for healing. And then another quote, she says, "The ritualized environment is constructed and reconstructed by the actions of the social agents within it and provides an experience of the objective reality of the embodied subjective schemes that have created it," which I like because it points out this experiential component of reality and also this way that we take in information and then we reconstruct it by our actions. So finally, I say that, yeah, you might remember him, that lived religion offers a perspective that is different than the anthropological and psychiatric things I read. Lived religion, pretty obviously, is this interaction of religion and experience, and it's shaped by these everyday practices of the people actually participating in religion. So I find lived religion to be so important because it's actually what we can study, and I found that this, although psychiatry and spirit possession seem in opposition, they're both trying to make explanations out of something, making the invisible visible, which is all good and fine, but we can't actually really do that. So William James, my favorite quote, he says, "In the end, it had come to our empiricist criterion, by the fruits ye shall know them, not by their roots." And basically, because we can't actually know it's some sort of like mental thing or if it's literally a spirit coming in and taking over someone's body, what we can do is look at the experiential component of this and then show that like people's experiences are valid. Yeah, our practices are the only sure evidence. So in conclusion, I find in the paper that community and ritualized healing erodes this boundary between the healthy and the ill by allowing the help seekers to participate in daily temple life. That this focus on the embodied lived experience rejects the constructed dichotomy between the biological and culture. Lived religion reveals how schizophrenia and spirit possession can both be real insofar as they fit within the social and physical environments where they occur. And finally, as scholars of religion, and if you're not a scholar of religion in this room, as Americanized subjects, we must question our own biases and preconceived assumptions of what constitutes truth and reality. For being so encouraging and supportive and not making me cry, which I was really worried about. Also Sango, my academic advisor was in Japan. Kristen Bloomer and Mara Block, I'm not really sure where they are, but they're all here in spirit. And those two are very crucial in the formulation of this. My peer reviewers, Maddie and Sarah, yeah, I don't know where you guys are right now. And then the entire religion department, my friends, housemates, family ghost, we have a house ghost, not actually my muse, but it seemed relevant. And then my family and also modern psychiatry for helping me get through Carlson.